This budget is pretty tight, and next month it's going to be getting even tighter because she's going to lose $600 in income. So we're going to work on freeing up cash flow by using the credit cards to pay bills, also known as velocity banking with credit cards. She gets most of her income at the beginning of the month, but we do have her paydays listed here. We have her cash expenses listed in red. Her credit cards are listed in pink, and then anything that's in blue is something that can go back on the credit cards. Then we also need to go in and look to see when those credit card statements are probably closing. So the Discover card, it probably closes somewhere around the 11th, so we circle that and put an initial next to it. Then we go through and do that with all of the other cards. Remember, the cards that are due at the end of the month will probably have a statement at the beginning of the next month. So the Wells Fargo statement date is probably somewhere around the 1st. And then she has a lot of Capital One credit cards. Those statements change by a day or two each month. If there's only 30 days in the month, the statement will likely close one day earlier than if there's 31 days in the month. For example, my Capital One card is due on the 15th. If there's 31 days in the month, it closes on the 21st. If there's 30 days in the month, it closes on the 20th. So you have to go through and look at your credit card statement history to see what that pattern is. And I know American Express cards also do the same thing. Now we go in and plan which bills are going to be put back on each of these cards based on those statement dates. So the internet and the phone, it's not going to be able to go on the Discover card because that statement doesn't close until the 11th. But it can probably start going on the Wells Fargo card because it should close a couple days before both these bills are due. Same thing here with the energy and the Google. The statement doesn't close until the 11th, so we can't do the spending until the 12th. So all of these bills here will probably go on the credit cards that we pay towards the end of the month. So you can see I've listed everything out here, and we just split up her food and gas across these two cards. These are the total amounts that we need to spend back on the cards based on her bills. And this isn't going to be exact. You have to go in and do this for yourself because some of these bills here didn't have a date with them, so I'm not sure exactly when the spending happens for those. But go in, list out your credit cards, then look at your planner to see when the statement dates are and what bills can go back on each card. Now let's look at her paychecks. So May 1st, she gets $2,000, $600, and $1,038. This is $3,638. Then we need to go through and see what cash expenses she has due. Now, since she gets paid a larger amount at the beginning of the month, I would try to pay as many cash expenses as possible with that amount. So really the only cash expense that we do have is the rent on the 1st, but we also have childcare, a car repair, and the car payment. With the money on the 1st, I would probably pay the rent, the childcare, and the car payment if you can go in and pay this early, or change the date to have it come out earlier in the month. Or we could possibly just switch the car repair or even the tithes with the car payment. But this is how I would do it. Then we go through and look and see what credit cards are due between this paycheck and the next one. And it's really only these two here. But again, since we had a large amount of money coming in on the 1st, we're going to pay more than just these two cards. We're going to start getting ahead on these other cards here. So we're going to probably pay all of these and maybe some of these over here. These numbers here are what we need to account for as far as interest goes. So if we look here at the Discover card, we planned on putting $218 back onto that card. So if we look over here, we see we had to pay $84 for interest plus $218. So we need to pay $302 to the Discover card. We add $218 for the bills, means we need to pay $302 for that card. Now make sure the amounts we have listed here are always more than the minimum. The minimum on this card was $94, so this does cover that. Then we look at the Amazon card, we probably have about $20 for interest and we need to pay $40 in expenses with that card. So we add 40, meaning we need to pay $60. The minimum on that card was $35, so we're good there. Capital One, we only had $14 going back on it, so we need to pay $24. The Citi card, I said we had $22 going back on it, so we need to pay $28. Capital One, we have interest of $46 plus $126 in spending. We need to pay $172. So if we look here, we had the income, we subtract the cash expenses, $2,303. We have $1,335 left that we can pay to the credit cards. So now let's see if we have enough to cover all of these. So we need $302, $60, $24, $28, and $172. So we still have enough and we have some left over. We can go in and pay to the other cards as well. Now this amount here is just accounting for the interest and what needs to be spent back on the cards. So the balances won't go down at all unless we add more to the payment here. And I'll go over what I would do about that in just a minute. So again, we have everything listed here. We're gonna go back in and do the same thing for this side. The Capital One, we had $18 in interest plus $65 in spending, means we need to pay $83. The Target card is on a payment plan. I wouldn't put anything back on that card. I would just pay whatever is on the payment plan for now. The Capital One card, we had 16 plus the 218 for the gas and the food, like the Discover card. So we need to pay $286. The Barclays, we had $12 plus 151, means we need to pay $163. And the Wells Fargo, we had $32 plus $135, which means we need to pay $167. Now remember I said these last two cards of the month would pay the bills in the beginning of the month. So the first month, this is a little bit weird, but there's two things that we can do. So we have the Barclays paying the internet and the phone bill, and then we have the Wells Fargo paying the energy and the Google. Those are due at the beginning of the month. So these have to be paid. So what we can do at the beginning of the month is go in, take some of this money here and pay these two cards. Now the statements won't close at those lower amounts, but you can go in, make the payments, and then put the spending back on the cards. Or you can make them a cash expense. So we would take all of these bills here and just consider them a cash expense for the 1st of May. Then next month, you'll use the cards that you pay at the end of the month. So May 15th, we get $1,100. We have cash expenses of $840. This leaves $260 that we can pay to the credit cards. Remember, we had $749 left over here that we can also use to pay these cards. And we can pay them early. There's no reason to go in and wait until the 15th when we get paid. If we have this amount left over here, start paying some of those other cards, get it out of your account. Okay, so let's 749 plus 260. And then we have 83 minus 32 for the Target, minus 286, minus 163, minus 167. So we have $278 left over that we can add more payments to this here. Now we might have to double pay these here the first month if we want to put those bills on those cards. So that's one option of where it could go. If we want the card balances to go down, let's just say we add $10 to all of the cards. So $10 there and an extra $10 here to everything except for the Target. So that would be an extra $90 that we paid to the credit cards, and those balances should all go down around $10. This would leave $188. Now with that $188, maybe we want to pay like $50 to 3 cards or $100 to one and $88 extra to another. If we pay an extra $100 to this card here, that brings that statement balance down to $138. So if we add the 100 and pay it here, the new statement balance would be about $138 plus a little bit for interest. Then in June, if we go in and pay this card off completely, $143, the statement balance on the card will be 0. And then we're no longer charged any interest on that card. But there are multiple different ways that you can spread that money out to pay to the cards. And if we were counting these bills here as a cash expense, that would take up most of this money here. So there wouldn't be a lot left over to have the balances go down at all. But we did free up some cash flow because we basically eliminated the credit card payments by paying the money to them and then using the cards back. And like I said, next month, she has $600 less in income. She does have more car repairs that need to be done, but maybe that can wait. We could possibly cut back on the tithing for now, just until we get caught up. And for the summer, she has this childcare expense. So after school starts again, she's going to have an extra $400 added back into her budget, which will also help to pay down some of this debt. I would say the goal for the next couple months is to just try to break even, possibly have these balances go down a small amount. Now remember, she's paying $503 a month to her car. So whatever the balance is that's owed on the car is also going down when we pay $503 per month. This is why it's really important to go in and track all of your debt balances. A lot of times with loans, we don't realize it, but the balances actually are getting lower. So we are making some progress, even if we're basically breaking even here. But anyway, the planner is super helpful when you're going in to try to plan these things because you can look at everything all on one page. Then we have to go in and figure out which bills we want to put on each card. Then we have to make sure whatever we're paying to the card is enough to cover the bills plus the interest. You can do the interest calculation like I do, the balance times the APR divided by 12. That will get you pretty close to what your interest amount is. Or you can go back in, look at your last month's statement, see what the interest was. Then it should be just slightly lower than whatever that number was. So there's multiple ways to do that as well. But the payment has to cover the bills and the interest. And always make sure that the amount you're paying covers the minimum payment, which in this case, all of these do. But this is how we look at doing velocity banking with credit cards. If you have any questions about velocity banking, credit cards, credit scores, debt, or anything else, let me know.